Hello, and welcome to my kitchen. What I'd like to talk about this week is some of the consequences of the way that the war in Ukraine is developing for events in the region and for politics in the region. And this is an area where probably it's a mistake to try to make any sort of prediction. It is generally a mistake to try to predict the future. What you can do, I think, instead of making a prediction, is to extrapolate reasonably on the basis of trends that are visible, and also to observe things that have already been demonstrated. So let's make this middle range prediction. Let's say one of the consequences of the way that the war is turning out is that Russian influence in the world is going to be declining, and in the region as well, since that's a part of the world. And this is because of something we've been able to see. We don't know how the war is going to turn out or how long it's going to last. But one thing that we can observe is that the myth of the invincibility of the massive Russian army has been destroyed, and that is a long-term effect. So what sort of response is this getting in the region now? Well, one of the things that you're seeing is that some of the activity of Russia on states in the region has been intensified. In particular, they have intensified their work on destabilization. This is especially visible in the intensified contact with the clients that they have in Bosnia and Herzegovina, especially the parties led by Milorad Dodik and Dragan Čović in that country. You also see Russia more intensively using propaganda, the contact that it has with networks, including religious networks in the region, to intensify political campaigns. And increasingly, and we'll see more of this as the weather gets colder, using its control over energy. Now, this means that in the short term, you're seeing some intensified activity. What you're likely to see in the long term, I think, is decreased ability to continue and sustain that level of intensified activity. So over time, you are going to see some changes. In particular, right now, the only state in the region that has not joined the rest of Europe in sanctioning Russia in response to aggression in the war is Serbia. Serbia is under intense pressure to change its position, and that it is also under intense pressure to change its position in relation to Kosovo. Serbia is more likely to change its position in relation to Russia than in relation to Kosovo, especially because this is a short-term position. And in doing so, Serbia will join the policy of the rest of Europe, with the exception of Hungary. I think the other thing that you'll see over time is that as the capacity of Russia is diminished, that the clients with whom it has been working in Montenegro, in Macedonia, in Bosnia and Herzegovina will be abandoned. Now, what happens once they are abandoned? I mean, let's say a client of Russia's like Dodik. I mean, frankly, a profiteer who maintains their position by spreading hatred, it's not going to be hard to find somebody to take that position instead of him, with or without sponsorship. It's a position for which you could say that there is demand. I think that in order to answer the question of what takes place in the region as the power of Russia internationally diminishes, has to do with the answer to the question of what is the attraction of pro-Russian sentiment in the region contemporarily in the first place. And here I think we can dismiss a lot of the mythological stories about historical attachments and cultural similarity and so on. This has already been done in the literature. I mean, if you're familiar with it, you don't buy it. I think we can make another observation though, and that is that the current group of people in power is not so much pro-Russian as it is anti-Western. That is responding to fear of the power, especially what seems like monolithic power coming out of the European Union and out of North America. And this anti-Western sentiment grows out of some older sentiment that is traditional in the region and in many other regions of the world, which is anti-modern, anti-cosmopolitan, narrow in its perspectives. And what it primarily represents is fear of declining elite, that it will lose its local monopoly over power, that it will be unable to meet up with competition coming from other parts of the world, and the loss of monopolies based on ethnic power. Let me illustrate this a bit by showing you a picture, if I can show you a picture. This is a propaganda poster. You've probably seen it before, a real propaganda poster that was shown some toward the beginning of the war in Ukraine. And what it shows is you have this umbrella that is colored with the colors of Russia, protecting the angels and apparently something ecological against what? Well, there are these bombs dropping. There's one bomb with a Nazi symbol, one with the flag of the United States, one with the flag of the European Union, one with the symbol of NATO, and one with the rainbow symbol of LGBT movements. So the idea is that here is this Russian umbrella protecting the righteous against these evils from the West that are represented not just by military and political and economic power, traditional enemies, but also by the power of cultural and sexual difference, the power of threats to monopolies over ideology. Let's say that we've looked at this picture long enough and just suggest that this is where the anti-West sentiment comes from. It is a more contemporary manifestation of an anti-modern sentiment of resistance to the material world as it is changing that dates back a long time. You can see a lot of it described in old sociology. And in that sense, this being so broad and so historically bounded, it does not depend on the power of Russia or another state. It can be replaced. Another state can step in to be the sponsor of this sentiment. It has happened before. This is a type of sponsorship that is easy to replace, but considering that the world continues to change, regardless of the sentiments of hostility expressed toward this change, it is harder to sustain than it is to establish. Eventually that is going to fade as well, but we have to be patient.